Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the monthly meeting of the Board of Education at 7 p.m. on May 21st, 2024. I'll start our meeting with a roll call so you're familiar with who's sitting at the table here tonight. I myself am Deb Shute. I am the chair. We have Dr. Thage Singh, our vice chair.
Present, Deb.
Jeff Fleischman, our secretary.
Present, thank you.
Lynn Katz.
Present, thank you, Deb.
Sarah Heath.
Present, Deb.
Nicole Russo will be joining us shortly. She has a child obligation at Thompson Brook, I believe, tonight, so she's coming after that. Suzanne Zakaris.
Present, thank you.
Chris Campbell.
Present, thank you.
And Ramesh Kandapilli.
Present, thank you.
As far as our administrators, we have Dr. Carnamola, our superintendent.
Present, thank you.
Mr. Giannini, our assistant superintendent.
Here, thank you.
Mr. Medic, our assistant superintendent.
Present, thank you.
Ms. Russo, our business manager.
Present, thank you.
And Ms. Sardinskis, our executive assistant to the superintendent and board clerk.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. All right, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I always like to start our meetings by reading the mission statement. It's what brings us all together to do the work that we do. Our mission is to inspire in each student a joy and passion for learning and a commitment to excellence, personal integrity, and social responsibility. I always find it to be the perfect segue into our recognition piece as well. Is Dr. Lockhart here with us? Would you like to come forward and join us as we celebrate our valedictorian and salutatorian?
Hello, everyone.
I'm a little bit taller than this. It's okay. Hello, my name is Stephanie Lockhart. I am the proud principal of Avon High School. Good afternoon, everyone, or evening at this point. So I wanted to take a moment to introduce our two very distinguished students, which I'm happy that they're both here today because I know that today was one of those days that they didn't have to be here, but they are here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Yes? If you all don't know, today was one of our senior skip days, so this just shows you the type of students that they are, that they decided to come and be here with us today to be recognized. So I will start with our valedictorian, Helen Jindal. Come on up. I actually took this out because I'm going to allow TJ to tell you just a few of the things that he has done here because he is involved in so many different things in the school, and his GPA is probably higher than any of you ever had in high school. I could not have ever achieved that GPA, so just tell us just a few of the things that you do here.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. So if you don't know me, my name is Dylan, but most of my friends also call me TJ. So if you see me in the hallways or after the meeting today and you want to meet me, feel free to call me TJ. But yeah, like Dr. Lockhart said, academics throughout my high school career have been a big focus of mine, and I'm really proud to be standing here as valedictorian. I mean, when I came into high school and leaving middle school during the COVID year, I had zero expectations about high school. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I wasn't expecting to be valedictorian. I just came in, did my schoolwork, tried to do as best as I could, and I'm glad to be standing here today. Aside from academics, I know Dr. Carnamola and Ms. Shute. They came to see me before the meeting and were talking about my Eagle project, which actually didn't support the Avon crew team here. I know Ms. Singh, both your daughters have done it, so it's an organization I've been a part of since freshman year. I just finished my 8th season with them this past Sunday, our last regatta ever. Kind of sad about that, but life's full of beginnings and ends. So my Eagle project was to build oar carriers for them, which I hope they're going to continue to use in the near future. I completed my Eagle project this past December, and I'm going to have my Court of Honor, which is the official event of celebration for Eagle Scouts on June 9th, I think? Yeah, June 9th. And then aside from crew and being an Eagle Scout and a Boy Scout, I've also been a part of the AHS robotics team, which I know after COVID, we had a little bit of struggle. We had a little bit of struggles restarting up, but we had 2 successful seasons, and I was proud to be named a co-captain with 2 other peers of mine last year, and it was a fun and enjoyable season, and I'm glad to have done it. And aside from that, I'm also a senior class officer. I've been a class officer since sophomore year. I'm also the NHS secretary, so both of those are 2 big commitments I want to do to give back to my school and all the help they've given me throughout my high school career. I think that sums it up. Unless.
Now, do you all see why he's a valedictorian? Thank you, TJ. Funny story, in October, we actually celebrated the students who had been recognized as National Merit Scholar Commended Students or semifinalists. And TJ was one of the students that was like, how long is this going to take? I got to get back to class, so can we hurry this up? He was eager to get back. So round of applause for our valedictorian. Great job, TJ. And I will tell you all that I did not tell him that he was going to have to come up here and speak before he did it. He just did that off the cuff, because this is who he is as a student. So, are you ready? I will now present to you our salutatorian, Abigail Chu. Come on up. Another fantastic individual, and I will also let her tell you a little bit of what she's involved with here at AHS.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so grateful and honored to be here today, so thank you to you all. In my time at Avon High School, similar to TJ, I first got here and I was like, what is happening? On my second day, I asked a teacher, I was like, where is the gym? What is like E103? And she was like, honey, that's on the other side of the school. And I was like, no! But it was an adjustment, but I have loved my time here at Avon High School. Part of that is because of the activities I'm involved in. I've been on the Avon field hockey team all 4 years, which was just a great and really supportive environment to grow. You might have seen us if your child plays sports, like running the 2 mile around the school, fun times. And I've also been involved in the Leo Club. We put a little free library in near the Avon Senior Center outside the Sycamore Park area. And the Avon East Asian Club. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting all my stuff now. Student government, and what else? Oh yeah, that. I'm one of the leaders of the Avon Voices for Equity Club that we have here. We just recently did our second annual Diversity Week, which I'm really proud of, and we're having another celebration coming up in the coming weeks. So I'm just really proud of all of my efforts that I've done to make little changes to the community here and all of the ways that it has in turn changed me. Thank you so much.
Great job. She spoke a little bit about the free library that she did outside of the senior center, but what she didn't tell you was how long that project actually took. When they first approached us about it, she did it with another friend. We talked about having to get town permits, and we didn't hear anything else about it. So we figured, okay, well, maybe, once they realized how much work was going into this, they decided not to pursue it. And then fast forward a year later, and I get an invitation to the ribbon cutting. They had gone through everything. They had gotten donations from different families. They had publicized, got all the permits that they needed, got everything up and running, and said, yeah, we just did this over the summer on our own, so just come on out and have some cookies. That's all you have to do is stand there. We've already got this covered. That's pretty much what she said to me. So I came, and it was a wonderful event, so thank you for doing that. Again, our salutatorian and valedictorian, these two wonderful Avon Falcons.
So we wouldn't want you to leave without getting an official certificate from us and get to shake your hand. But before we do that, I just want to acknowledge that all of us at this table recognize the hard work that it takes to get to where you are. TJ and Abby, this didn't happen overnight. You've been doing this for years. You've prepped for this, and it shows your character. And to hear you explain off the cuff how well-rounded you are in addition to your academics, it's just, this is the good stuff. This is why we sit here, because we hope to nurture all of our students to be able to be the best that they can be, and you certainly have achieved that. So we're very proud of you. If you both would please come forward so we can officially shake your hand, and then we would like to take a picture with the full board, and your parents are welcome to come and take a picture too.
All right, how about if we look left first so everybody gets the, there, we'll go this way.
right, we're not done celebrating. So Dr. Lockhart, would you like to come forward and speak regarding our CABE winners? We have Leah and Zeta.
So I won't take a lot of time because I know I just took a lot of time with that. But when we were approached about actually selecting winners for this award, we first put it out to teachers to put out to their departments as well as the counselors. And usually you would expect a lot of names to come back, but everyone overwhelmingly selected these two amazing young people for all the work that they do here. And then I was told tonight by the middle school principal, Ms. Wallace, that these students actually got this very same award in the 8th grade, both of them together. So that just shows you what amazing individuals they are. So Leah, can you come up, and Zeta, is Zeta here? Oh, no, Zeta's at tutoring in the city today. She's one of the many activities that she does. So again, I'm gonna put Leah on the spot and allow her to tell you. I actually put her on the spot outside because she went and did her internship at Pine Grove, and I told her that she couldn't go and teach at Pine Grove. She had to come here and be Mr. Abrams when he left because she does such amazing stuff with him with that class. So she told me that she would, right?
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. I would say one of my favorite things about being in this high school is just how many opportunities we're given. For example, I thoroughly enjoyed my internship at Pine Grove. That was such an amazing experience. But as Dr. Lockhart said, I have a very close bond with Mr. Abrams, one of our social studies teachers here, and he has truly opened my eyes to a world of social justice and the power of my voice. So a year ago, I traveled to Europe with him, and I learned so much, and it was themed around like the Freedom Trail, so we learned so much about the Holocaust and the history that's all over there, and that really sparked my love and joy for fighting for what we need in this world and using our voice. So I gave a presentation a speech a couple months ago at a Holocaust memorial event to survivors and some of their family members, and I have been involved. We had a senator here that I interviewed or was on a panel with, and then outside of that, I'm very involved in our Unified and Best Buddies communities. I'm one of the presidents of Best Buddies, which is a group that brings together people of all levels of abilities, and we run really fun events. And then I love Unified Basketball. I've been involved with that for a while. I also serve on our Youth Services Advisory Board for the town. And as Abby said, I love field hockey as well. It's one of my favorite activities. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Again, just to let you all know, great job, Leah. Just what an amazing individual she is. When the organization reached out to Mr. Abrams about a student speaker, immediately, didn't have to think very hard. He said, I have the perfect student, and he asked Leah. Same thing when the senator came here, they asked, well, it would be great if we could have a student, and immediately, right away, her name was the first name that was brought up. So just a testament to the amazing work that she does here and how involved she is and how well everyone is aware of all the good stuff that she does here. So thank you, Leah. We're going to miss you. Oh, great. Perfect timing. Zeta has just arrived.
Good.
Thanks. So Zeta was at Tutoring in the City, which is one of the activities that she does here. So Zeta, come on up. You're jumping right on the spot here. Hello. Great. How are you doing? And this is Zeta. This is why she was selected for this award. All of her teachers just really talk about what a light she is in the classroom and in the hallway and everywhere. I'll tell you a funny story, Zeta, don't kill me. A few weeks ago, I see Zeta walking out of the office, and she's like huffing and puffing and very upset. And I was like, well, Zeta, what's the problem? And she's like, nothing. Everything's fine. I was like, come on into my office, and what's going on? She's like, it was too late to sign up for the late bus, and I have to do this interview. And if I don't do this interview, they can't record it today, and I'm going to let my entire club down. This is the type of person that she is. She was asked if she could do an interview for one of the activities that she is involved with, and she tried to get to sign up for the late bus, but she had to finish something in class, and she didn't want to miss class time, so she waited a little bit, and then she was kind of upset. So we were able to fix that for her. But this is the involved type of individual that Zeta is. So now I'm going to pass you the mic, and I just want you to tell everyone just a little bit about the activities that you're involved with here at AHS.
Cool, right? So I've been involved with Avon Board of Equity and Tutoring in the City since freshman year, which played a great role in my leadership skills and have built my character throughout my high school career, and is going to continue on to senior year as well too. Recently, I've taken a leadership position in our Black Student Union. Has been a great pleasure doing that as well too, learning more about Black culture, but then also spreading that throughout the school, especially during Black History Month as well too. And then also in Avon Voice for Equity, I've taken the leadership role in Diversity Week. In Diversity Week, I made sure that, projects were planned, and then I also participated in or made the microaggressions presentation that I shared with students that, could voluntarily sign up for that session. And so through that, I just spread knowledge about equity and just to some way decrease ignorance throughout our school so people can become more knowledgeable and grow cultural competence. You know what I mean? So yeah, thank you.
That's why she got a leadership award. On my very first day here at Avon High School, I came out of the office and Zeta was standing at the door and she said, "Hello, Dr. Lockhart. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Zeta Marie, and if you have any questions about the school, I'm a person you can ask, so come and seek me out." That was the very first day here. So thank you, Zeta. Great job. Thank you all.
Don't go too far, Zeta. We want to give you something. But just so you know, this award, the CABE Award, is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Ed. So it really does matter to us on a different level. And we're incredibly proud of the two of you for everything that you've accomplished and how you just naturally dip your finger into it. And you're so good at it, and you're so charismatic. And we are so pleased to be able to recognize you. So if you both would come forward, we have certificates for you, and we'd like to take a picture as well. Come forward. Put it here because thank you. So come join us over here. We'll take a picture with you. And parents, if you'd like to take a picture, join us in the center. All right, we'll look left first. Let's see what's wrong. Got it. Now we'll look straight. One more. Thank you all. All right, thank you. One more. Oh, God, one more. Thank you. Thank you. We also have the privilege of two middle schoolers being recognized. Miss Wallace, if you'd like to come forward.
All right, good evening. You can hear me okay, right? Happy Tuesday. All right, so Mr. Suma and I have the pleasure of recognizing two middle school students for the CABE Student Leadership Award this year. And we're going to start with Cassette Champeau. I'm going to ask you to come up and join me, Cassette. I told her I was going to embarrass her. I did try to prank both of my students and say that they were going to have to give a speech, but Dr. Lockhart followed through on that. Cassette is an individual that when you think of someone who, the best analogy I can make is someone who has truly a heart of gold. When you ask any survey, 1,000 people in a room, and you were to ask, who would you want your future daughter to be like? And I truly mean this. Cassette Champeau is that person. She is kind. She does the right thing because it's the right thing. She is someone who seeks the person out in the cafeteria who's sitting by themselves and invites them to her table, not because Mr. Suma and I are going to notice and give her a compassion bobuck, but because it is purely the right thing to do, because what I've seen of Cassette in the last 2 years is someone that looks to lift others up, and that's not always the natural inclination for all human beings every day. And that is very much who you are, who you bring to your scholarly habits, who you bring to leadership opportunities. It is the core and essence of who you are and who you've been raised to be. And I wanted to read a little bit from what Cassette submitted as part of her nomination, because I think it speaks a lot to who she is and how she's learned to be the scholar leader that she is, and the representative of Avon Middle School as one of our two fantastic students being recognized tonight. So Cassette says, overall, as a leader, it is important to persevere through exhaustion and irritation when you have long days. I think back to what my mom told me. Never use personal excuses to keep you from doing what you signed up to do. This resonated with me because it was a choice that I made to be part of these groups, volunteer work, teams, and ensembles. Using the lesson that was taught to me by my mom during my experiences has molded me into the leader that I am today and will hopefully shape the leader I will become in the future. So I think I have the privilege of introducing Cassette. I think any number of her teachers, principals over the years would have very similar messages of just admiration and appreciation that you're part of our community. So congratulations. Woo! Give you a hug. Why don't you stand over here with me?
I'd like to call up Daviksha Jain, our next CABE winner. So the CABE Award was designed to recognize students who exemplify exemplary leadership. Daviksha is no exception to this. When I was posed with the task of introducing her and explaining why she is such a leader, I turned to the adults at AMS who have the opportunity and privilege to see her in action on a daily basis. One teacher said, Daviksha is one of the most respectful students I've ever had. She cares deeply about her learning and will always seek clarification about concepts. Her classmates like working with her because of her kindness and willingness to collaborate. She elevates class discussions with her thoughtful questions, and she quietly, but frequently, is a leader when her group is posed with a difficult problem to solve or a question to answer. Another teacher stated, I've thoroughly enjoyed having Daviksha in my class this year. She is honest, dependable, and incredibly hardworking. She is a quick learner and adapts easily to challenges. In class, she demonstrates her remarkable leadership skills by assisting and motivating other students. I have been consistently impressed by her dedication, skills, and work ethic. Daviksha, it is an honor to stand here tonight recognizing you for this award. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for how you carry yourself. And most of all, thank you for being you. You should be proud. Congratulations.
All right, so ladies, we do have certificates for you as well, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge how incredibly proud we are of you. You're just getting started. Same with our other recipients, but you guys are just on the cusp. Leah and Zeta proved that you can get it in the middle school and get it at the high school as well. So we are looking forward to seeing you more, and we know you're going to do good things, and quite frankly, all the kind words that have said about you matter the most. So being good humans is what's most important. So please come forward. We'd like to acknowledge you, and parents, you can certainly participate with a photo as well.
Still got two more.
We have one more person we need to recognize, and I hope I don't get tearful. But Lillian, we are so proud of you, hon. Oh God, it's starting, okay. You are our senior student rep on the board. We've had you for 2 years now, and I've had the privilege of watching you grow through all your years here in Avon, and I'm incredibly proud of you. You are such a kind person, so intelligent, you are elegant and graceful, and you sing beautifully. I'm so glad that you served here with us because you were reliable and you always came prepared, and that matters. It shows that you took it seriously, and we knew that. So you respected us, and we have so much respect for you, and we know you're just going far. So I hope you'll come back and visit us because we would love to see you, and we would like to give you something too. So if you wouldn't mind, come on around, and we're going to take a picture with you as well.
Ms. Sardinskas wanted to make sure that she recognized you directly also because she has one of the toughest jobs of all of us sitting here as the board clerk. And Lillian was always here, she was always prepared, and of course, my assistant appreciates someone who is always, always on time and always prepared without her help.
Yes.
Thank you, Lillian. Very much so. Oh, sorry. I got the hug though. Thank you. There tends to be a little more whooping at the graduation for our student reps, so just be prepared for that. All right, and we get to keep you here at the table with us for tonight. It's your final meeting, and I hope you enjoy it. So we'll do our best, but thank you.
Come before graduation?
I don't know. I mean,
Now I have to come in June.
yes,
We
here
understand this is probably it.
we will release you. But for everyone who came here tonight to enjoy our recognition, we are not offended if you want to excuse yourselves. We do know it is still a school night, so certainly you can exit and that will be fine. We will continue on with the business of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Board of Education regular monthly meeting of March 19th, 2024?
So moved.
So moved by Chris. And second?
Second?
Second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes with 8.
Yep, I got it.
All right. Communication from the public. Ms. Sardinskas is going to look if anyone signed up. All right, we're all set there. Items of information. Okay, Lillian, this is your final student report.
Make it a good one.
All right.
Nikolai has a baseball game tonight, I believe, right?
Oh, that's exciting. All right.
So for Avon High School, during spring break, there was a trip to Europe with Mr. Abrams. The Red Cross Club hosted their second blood drive of the year on April 17th because the first time so many people wanted to donate. Spirit Week and Pep Rally were the week of May 3rd, and Beauty and the Beast sold out twice. The cast went around to the younger schools and were able to interact with the elementary schoolers. And we were also just nominated for 8 statewide theater awards. For the band concert, that was May 9th. There's a choir concert on May 23rd, and there's an orchestra concert on May 30th. Awards night was May 15th. Prom was May 18th with an Enchanted Evening theme. There was the internship showcase today. Many of you were able to see and interview our students. The Falcon Day is going to be this Friday. There's a senior field trip on May 28th, and the Dollars for Scholars night is also May 28th. For Avon Middle School, they put on the school musical Newsies. They had SBA testing in mid-May, and that was also true for all the elementary schools, I believe. There was an orchestra concert on May 16th. There was the AMS talent show on May 17th. On May 19th, there was a mini golf night for the entire family. They have a day of play on May 24th. Then the 8th grade ceremony and dance, the 8th grade field trip, and the 7th grade field trip. For Thompson Brook, they put on Frozen Junior the weekend of April 19th. Tonight is their school-wide concert, which is why Mrs. Russo is not here. Relay for Life will be June 1st, 2024, and that's for all of Avon and the Farmington Valley as well. For Pine Grove, they celebrated Family Heritage Day and embraced the diversity of their school. On May 22nd, all the schools will have early dismissal for professional development. On May 23rd, they have a PTO meeting. On May 24th, there is a field day. And on May 29th, they have their 4th grade chorus and orchestra concert. And then finally, for Roaring Brook School, they had their Around the World Fair on April 26th, which was also a celebration of diversity and all the cultures at their school. On May 31st, they're going to have RBS's Blazers Backyard Bash, which replaced Mayfair, and they also have a field day coming up. And finally, their Hat Day fundraiser on May 3rd raised over $1,100 to support members of the Avon community impacted by the fire at Avon Place.
Well done, Lillian. I think you deserve a round of applause for that. Thank you so much. And now we move on to our financial report with Ms. Russo on page 9.
Good evening, everyone. Springtime is generally a little bit slower in the finance world. Our March to April financials were very minimal changes. If you attended the Finance Committee, we did have one in April, but we did not report out with the lack of April board meeting. We ended the month of April 30th, 2024, with a little over $2.4 million, or 3.69% in unencumbered funds, compared to the year prior of $3 million and 4.71% unencumbered. If you were to look at our financial summary, the main driver of that is our tuition line, and that is directly related to our special education tuition, the amount of funds we had unencumbered last year and that line to put into escrow versus the amount we have unencumbered this year. In our salaries, we had some positive balances for some unpaid FMLA leave days, and the corresponding deficit in our teacher long-term subline. And you'll see in the budget transfer included in your consent agenda 2024043, transferring those funds, taking those savings from those unpaid days to offset the cost of the substitutes. In non-certified salaries, we had some variances in our nurse, custodians, and maintainers due to some additional hours worked, sub-hours, and staff movement, and some interims to cover those out on different leaves as well, workers' comp or FMLA. In homebound tutoring, our students' needs continue to grow for those who are home for medical other reasons. In other expenses, we continue to see HVAC repairs and general repairs and maintenance a little bit on the rise. As we've discussed prior, our buildings continue to age every day. And as we turn on the air conditioning units in the winter season, we tend to see those kind of HVAC repairs as we start to turn on the systems and inspect them. In contracted services, the daily substitutes, that also ties in with the teacher FMLA days. For those short, before we can hire sometimes long-term subs or for shorter leaves, we just cover that with the contracted services through Kelly subs that covers those days, and we are a little bit over budget in that line. We've offset that on budget transfer 2024044 with some savings in other lines. Transportation, we're excited that our students, as Dr. Lockhart talked about, the late bus is something that we do have every day for our students. We have 2 this year because of such interest both at the middle school and high school and the number of students taking that bus. So we have savings in other transportation lines we're using to offset that. Supplies, books, and equipment, we have some variances due to price increases from things we budgeted this time last year for this year versus what the actual cost was. In nutrition services, as of the time I wrote this report, we stood at $23,000 in negative debt. That continues to grow. We continue to reach out to the families, and we ask them to submit free and reduced paperwork, even though there's a little bit of school left. It still helps. The state did just approve, I got notification today, Mrs. Dreyer's in the audience, that I believe the state approved using state funds to keep free and reduced meals free next year. So those families that qualify for reduced meals will be free. Okay, so that's great news for those families. But those families who do not qualify or haven't turned in paperwork, meals are paid. And we just remind them of that. Currently, we're still awaiting word from the state, unless Mrs. Dreyer has any word otherwise, of whether or not they're going to allow us to use our excess funds in the cafeteria fund to offset those costs. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we'll have that, we'll be able to absorb that within the funds then, and that won't be a general fund drain, that $23,000. In special education, our contracted services and evaluations, we continue to see some trends upward in audiological services, behavioral technical services, and in outside independent evaluations. And our encumbrances were adjusted for the wheelchair ban we currently have. Also not on the report at the time we wrote it, but we have had some additional encumbrances for the Avon Wood families impacted by the fire, and we continue to meet whatever transportation needs they may have, which continue to be fluid at this point. Do you want me to do year-end now? Okay.
I think that makes sense if you're okay with that.
Within our year-end, as we close the year, the budget uncertainty has, a little bit of a pause on everything. We had lifted the pause on spending, or lifted the freeze after spring break, allowed the schools to go ahead and process the orders that they needed for the fourth quarter to close out the school year. Still with much oversight there, necessary supplies, necessary trips, end-of-year celebrations, end-of-year field trips, those sort of activities. We've now shut down the budget again, as we do every year at this time. In May, we always stop, evaluate, look at where we are, make sure we're able to fund things such as our escrow for next year, which is at $728,000. In May, we've encumbered those funds to be able to put them into our escrow account for next year. And then what we're looking to do with the rest of the year, if there's any savings remaining, to either expend them for purchases we paused on. We have not yet purchased our technological equipment that the IT department has had budgeted for this year. That was one of the areas that I asked them to pause on in case we needed those funds, as we were trending earlier in the year. In not a great spot. So we're looking to do that, looking to expend things that we just held on, some deferred maintenance. Those lines are already a little bit over budget, as we've seen, and we've moved some funds around to cover that, and savings and utilities and some other places that do not impact students. Try to use operation funds for operations. But we will look to put forward some of those repairs that we have held off on and do that required maintenance, because it needs to get done. And then we'll look to purchase any supplies and equipment we may need to start the school year to ensure we have it on July 1. I do know that, and we'll talk about it later when we talk about the open choice supplemental appropriation, but talking with the IT department right behind me, there's already 7 to 10 week delays, I believe, in Chromebooks. So the sooner we can process that order ensures that we get them in time to be able to prep and deliver for the start of school next year.
Thank you, Susan, for being so good at what you do. Do any board members have questions? Go ahead, Thage.
The Chromebooks are for which grade? Is it students or staff?
Chromebooks are for grades 5 and 9 typically. They're the years we replace them.
Anything else, Thage?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. We're waiting with bated breath. Anyone else? Questions? Thank you very much. You always make it very clear and easy to understand. We appreciate that. All right, now we move on to committee and liaison reports, curriculum and professional practices. Lynn?
Yes, our last meeting was in March, where we reviewed the new math pilot program. They've been piloted, and now we're moving forward with them. We're very excited about that. And our next meeting is going to be next week on May 28th, and we will start at 5:30. That's a change.
All right, thank you. Next is finance, that would be me. We had the pleasure of working with Ms. Russo, and she explained all of these in even greater detail to the committee. So we appreciate you doing that in summary for the full board tonight. On the consent calendar, you will see we do have budget transfers, and we are also acknowledging donations from the PTOs that supplement what we can't within our budget. So we are very grateful for all of the fundraising and the hard work that goes in by the parents. So again, we will be meeting again on, I don't have that in front of me.
June 5th.
June 5th will be our finance meeting. All right, negotiations, Suzanne.
The negotiations committee are wrapping up negotiations with our custodians and maintainers right now, and we're currently in negotiations with our paraprofessionals, interventionists, and nutrition services. That's it for now.
Thank you. Policy, Thage?
So we had our meeting last Tuesday on May 13th, and tonight under new business, we'll be talking about those policies that we brought forward to the full board for approval.
Perfect, thank you. Next, our Capital Region Education Council rep, Chris?
Correct. I just went to, we had the annual meeting it was on the 15th. It was great. There was students there from the, one of our schools that sang. There was 3 kids that sang their hearts out. It was beautiful. And then the superintendent, Tim Sullivan, he has retired. We have a new one, Sasha, who is amazing. I got to meet her. Mr. Tessan was there with me. He's not here this evening, but he was in attendance. And we also had another student of our own, Utej Kolu. He won a scholarship for the Brucey Douglas Scholarship for Overcoming Adversity. So it was good to see Avon there as well. Our next meeting is going to be on June 19th.
Excellent. Thank you for representing us. We appreciate it, and hopefully we can have that student join us maybe at a future meeting so we
Yes.
get to shake and hug
Absolutely.
too. Yeah, but it's always good.
We've asked for June, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's hard.
Not very
It's hard.
popular meeting to be attended by students, but
That is true. All right, excellent. Thank you, Chris. All right, next is the board chair update. I want to acknowledge the internship showcase that happened right before this meeting. It's always one of my favorite evenings each season that we cover it. Ms. Mascoli does a fabulous job of finding these placements for these students. And since there were 9 tonight, I got to every single one and got to speak to every single student, and they all had positive experiences. I think it's a success when they don't necessarily have a positive experience as well, because they can narrow down and look to something else if that didn't work out for them. But everybody, and we had a lot of representation for our school system. We had Pine Grove, we had Roaring Brook, we had central office. So it was really nice to have our students right here with us, and they were all enjoying it. So thank you again to all the students for doing such a great job presenting it, and Ms. Mascoli for putting this together. The board really benefits from seeing the work that is being done. I also want to acknowledge that I was able to attend awards night with Mr. Campbell and Ms. Heath over here. It's such a fun evening to see our students receive awards. Hi, Nicole. Want to make note when she got, okay, good. Welcome. So we just enjoy hearing their names, and some of them are called more than once, and it's really exciting to just see it and clap and enjoy their successes. So it's always well done, and it was really well thought out and put together. So I want to thank the staff for doing that for our students as well, because it makes an impression on them, and I'm sure they'll remember it for years to come. It is the end of the year. We do still technically have a meeting prior to graduation, but most people will check out by then. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we recognize our administrators and our staff that are putting in that extra mile at this crazy time of year, just listening to Lillian announce all the things that are happening in each building. And we have the benefit of seeing those newsletters that go out to each of the buildings. So thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. It's all worth it. We can see what's happening because of all of your efforts. We appreciate you, and we hope that, I'm sure we'll see your faces again in June, but I just want you to know before you check out, we appreciate the efforts that you're doing, and we hope you do have a restful summer when the time comes. So hang on just a little bit longer. Other than that, I think I'll turn it over for the superintendent's report.
thank you. There's a lot of business on the agenda tonight to speak to, so I'll make this piece brief, just a few updates that I wanted to share. Also, awards night was fantastic. We had a lot of students that were honored, and thank you to the high school administration and the department coordinators and Jamie Tinker for putting that together. It was a great night. Graduation is progressing in full swing. I think we are visiting Bushnell this week, aren't we? Tomorrow. What I always tell you, it pops up on the calendar and I show up. Christine's like, oh, I know. That's how it works. To call her 13 times to make sure she's everywhere she's supposed to be. Something came up. I was asked a question recently regarding this, and I think I try not to dabble very much in social media because I have enough trouble in life managing family and work and so on, but someone called the office this week because I think that there were some questions somewhere, I assume, on Facebook about graduation, whether or not it was at the Bushnell and the costs associated with it and so on. So I just wanted to, I don't know if some of you had seen that also and were wondering. Yes, we are going back to the Bushnell. I think everyone knows that by now. And we've talked about this previously, but I don't know that necessarily every board member sitting here was a part of that conversation previously. Not only did we have a fantastic ceremony at the Bushnell by being able to have graduates have more guests with them, air conditioning, not worrying about the weather, parking, and so forth, we actually have saved money by going to the Bushnell, which seems counterintuitive, but I think it's not a ton of money, but if I remember correctly, it was maybe, sorry putting you on the spot because I was just thinking about this as we sat here, about $2,500 or somewhere thereabouts.
Around that, yes.
So, again, seems counterintuitive because graduation had been at the Polo Grounds, and we started it at the Polo Grounds since my time here. We had been at the high school. My first graduation in Avon was here at the high school. The turf wasn't there. So we don't have graduation at the high school anymore because the turf was put in. And everything that you put on turf damages it. So we can't put regular chairs, risers, and so on and so forth out there. I think we've talked about this before. They do sell some variations now that may not void the warranty of the turf. They're very expensive, and you really only buy them to use for this. You still can't put tents up. If it rains, you're still coming inside, and people are bringing 2 guests into the gymnasium and so on. So with the installation of the turf, we moved away. We went to the Polo Grounds. They were fantastic to us. We had a great run at the Polo Grounds, and particularly during the pandemic years where we had to follow the health department regulations about distancing, and we don't want to relive the drive up, all of that kind of stuff, but we were able to do it the best we could at the Polo Grounds. So we're grateful to them, and if we needed to, we would certainly go back there. However, this has worked. It's what our students and their families and staff chose. A survey was put out by the high school 2 years ago. They surveyed again this year, and we're headed back there. And I'm glad for that because I think it was a really nice event for our students. And we had all positive comments when it was over last year. So fingers crossed. And we're working through all the last minute bumps there because there will be some changes. The budget referendum, the meeting on the 28th for the Curriculum and Professional Practices Committee, as Lynn mentioned, she had asked me earlier about moving all together because I and we have to be at the public hearing if we're able to be for the budget on the same night. That was not originally scheduled until the referendum failed. So that is why the change is to 5:30. I most likely will still not be present at the Curriculum and Professional Practices Committee. Jess and I have spoken about this already. He's perfectly able to run that without me, and my daughter is running in the state meet that night. So I'm hoping that I see her maybe run one event before I come for the hearing. So I apologize, but I might have my things thrown out in the front lawn if I don't show up to the state meet. So I'm going to do my best at that. That is the 28th. The public hearing is at the Senior Center at 7 o'clock. Correct. And I think you've all been emailed the notifications and so on. Susan and I have been working on an updated presentation that hopefully captures some of the questions that have come up, that both came up at the end of that public hearing, that if, as you know from being there with us or saw after, we didn't have the opportunity in that meeting to engage with the public that was there to be able to answer concerns or questions that came up. I think that was most likely detrimental to the process. However, it was the way it worked that evening. I did offer, on our side, and I think Brandon did the same on the town side, offered to folks that were there if they wanted to reach out. I'd certainly speak to, meet with, whatever they wanted to do after that meeting. I did speak with one individual after that meeting, but was not able to address any of the other questions in public. So hopeful that as a result of the next hearing, I'll proactively be able to do that. And I think there still won't be comment at the hearing, I don't think.
There is.
But it's adjourning at the end. It's like another special meeting after, right? Is that how they're doing it?
No, there's public comment at the public hearing. It's their opportunity to speak and ask
Right.
questions.
But when that ends, I think they're calling another.
Oh.
I'm not certain how it's working yet. I'm hoping that we have opportunity again I'll do my best to front load all of the questions we know about. And then hopefully we'll be able to address some more of them that evening. Any other questions for me, or? I'll pause there if not, because there's quite a bit of other things to speak to tonight in terms of policy and so forth. Thank you. So on the enrollment, Mr. Medic, on the hiring report, you want to take those?
Good evening. One of our smaller hiring reports, the next smaller one will be June as we're finishing out this school year. We'd like to welcome Mr. Tilton, who is covering for medical leave at the middle school. In addition, we have continued to hire some non-certified staff to fill positions in nutrition services and some of our interim custodian positions. And we'd like to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate Mary Jane Zamitis, a longtime paraeducator in the district who will be retiring at the end of this month. And in addition to that, Ms. Jill Van Sluten, a very dedicated and talented art educator here at the high school, who will be leaving us at the end of the school year. And we want to thank them for their dedication, service, and commitment to our students, their colleagues, and school and the community. And we wish them well in this next chapter of their life.
I'm just wondering how we're doing with hiring for next year. I know it's a process, it takes forever, but where are we?
We are very much engaged in the hiring process at present. I'd like to thank, in particular, Dr. Lockhart, who has had a significant number of openings this year due to retirements. Her and her staff here have worked to fill several positions, and they're in process of interviewing for the remaining ones. In addition, we have had some transfers from our middle school to some open positions here at the high school. Ms. Wallace and her team have worked to fill those positions. I would say at this point, we're about 66% of the way through with our hiring for what we know at this point for certified staff. We'll start to turn our attention to our non-certified openings because we do see some movement in some of the annual positions, and we'll work on that over the summer. But we are at various stages of hiring for the remaining certified openings, and our goal is to have that done before June 28th.
We have had some questions as we've been hiring folks. I hired someone today, maybe and yesterday, because I do the last interview for all certified staff, so all faculty members, teachers, social workers, psychologists, counselors, anyone who has a certification, school speech pathologist, anyone who has a certification in school. I try to be the last interview. And Roberto and I have fielded, and I think some of the building administrators have too, some questions from folks that we had recently taken through the process when they heard or saw that the referendum failed, wondering, hoping that it didn't mean that we were going to rescind the positions that they had been offered. And at this time, obviously, we have not done that because we've been moving forward. These were all necessary hires that were in the budget. And obviously, I was hoping when we went last night that we wouldn't be told there was a large number to reduce. If so, I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to do that with any, I know we weren't going to be able to do that with any staff anyway. So that's basically what we've been telling people. We're hiring you because we need you. So luckily, I think they ended up all signing on. So fingers crossed, and we'll keep moving forward there. It has gotten more difficult to hire even in Avon, and meaning as a whole, there are less people entering the profession, and we are starting to see more and more of it, I think, as we put positions out. But we are still finding great candidates and excited. We've really hired some great people this season. And we are moving forward on the Thompson Brook principal search. Screening interviews were held already, and we have the next round interviews this week. And we'll go from there and see if we are still on target to move forward, because our goal is to have someone in place by July 1st. That is actually, we've all remarked that have been in to do the paper screening and then the personal screening of the interviews that were selected out of the paper screen. It's actually a very good pool of individuals. I would say we have more individuals that are already administrators, whether they're principals, some of them from central office and other districts and so on, that have applied than I think I've seen in the time that I've been here. So that was good news. On the enrollment report, we're status quo on enrollment. As of the printing of this report, we are down one student from last month, and likewise, last year at the same time, we are at 3119, and last year at the same time, we were at 3120. Kindergarten registration continues. Remind your friends and neighbors that if they have a kindergarten age student, we'd like them to register as soon as possible. We're trying to do placements. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we move on to our consent calendar. As mentioned before, there are the budget transfers and donation letters that we are approving, along with the fee schedule. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
So moved by Sarah. And a second?
Second.
Second by Suzanne. All in favor? Aye, passes unanimously with 9. Thank you. We do not have old business. We move on to new business. These two next items are things that we vote on every year. If you have any questions, certainly raise them. I like to read them into the record just to make it more official. But Maggie, do you want to give any summation of them just for new board members so they understand? You might need to come to the mic so that Nutmeg can enjoy you as well. This is our Director of Nutrition Services, Maggie Dreyer.
Good evening. As was mentioned, we vote on this every year. Federally, there are nutrition standards, very strict nutrition standards, and the state of Connecticut has somewhat stricter standards, and we vote to comply with those standards, and then there's exemptions. That will be the second part of it. And by doing that, we receive 10 cents per lunch served. That helps us to be able to purchase food of a higher nutritional value.
Are there any questions from board members? All right, I will do the honors of reading them. Thank you, Maggie. So for the healthy food certification, pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 10-215F, the Avon Board of Education certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ramesh. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, food and beverage exemption. I move that the Avon Board of Education will allow the sale of students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in the Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of an event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food and beverage sales. Do I have a second? Thank you, Nicole. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously again with 9. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on is our 2023 audit report. Ms. Russo.
Thank you. I'm happy to report for the fiscal year 2022-2023, the audit that was completed by CLA was found free of any deficits on the Board of Ed side. We did not have any management comments. The town did receive 2 comments, but very specific to the federal single audit, relevant to the ARPA funds they received. That's noted within the audit itself regarding disbarred vendors. What that means is there's a list of vendors that the federal government has disbarred. That means is, they may have nefarious activities or something that the federal government deems unsatisfactory. And so the auditors would like to see a policy in place for the town that has a check that they double check when they do business with a vendor that is not on that list, particularly if they use federal funds. The town has put a corrective action in to do that as of July 1st, 2024. Once they post their policy, I'll bring any changes that would be relevant to us to the policy committee so we can add them to our purchasing policy. But in practice, we will start doing that right away just to make sure those vendors that we do business with are not on that list. And I don't have any hesitation they are from the list I've looked so far, but we'll continue to double check that.
This is for informational purposes, so you don't need to act on it. The board received the audit report. It's pretty thick. All the effort and time that goes into it is really massive. The fact that we do not have any red flags on there is a huge accomplishment, and I believe Susan deserves a round of applause for that with her team. We do know that it is a team effort, but you do it so well, and we are so incredibly grateful, so thank you. We're very proud of that.
Can I ask a question? I'm curious about why would a vendor get on the disbarment list? What might that vendor do?
In true federal government fashion, it's not exactly clear. I'd like to have a better answer for you, Lynn, but yeah. Correct, it's not obvious. But I think it, in true fashion, perhaps it could be ties to terrorism, ties to money laundering, those sorts of things where they would get flagged. But the companies we do business with, we shop local first. Of course, we shop USA exclusively unless there's no other choice. So we're okay. But we're going to be checking. It's more what we have to be careful on is, if we were to buy from a website, as more and more things are online only, we've had to ask staff to rethink their purchase. Because once my team gets a request, they then do their due diligence, and they find out the company's from overseas. The company, doesn't have a United States tax ID number, and that's an immediate red flag for us, and we will no longer do business with them. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you again. Our next item is our 2024-2025 proposed Avon Board of Education meeting dates. As we finish out this school year, we need to prepare for the next one. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to look this calendar over. Is there any glaring date that stands out to anyone that perhaps wouldn't work? Okay. So we still will have to approve our committee meeting dates, but this at least gets our monthly meeting dates on the calendar so we can prepare. We do take the month of July off, so we won't return until August. But if everyone is comfortable with this, then we will move tonight to approve them so that we can notice the town of the meeting so the public can attend if they so choose. So do I have a motion to approve the 2024-2025 calendar Board of Ed dates?
So moved.
Thank you, Lynn. Do I have a second? Second by Suzanne. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously again. Thank you. Next, we have revised policy 3543.31, retention and disposition of electronic records and information. It begins on page 37. If Dr. Carnamola, you want to address the changes.
Thank you. We discussed all of these policies at length at the previous policy committee. Thank you. We had additional board members present for that discussion also, and I heard from some of you before then and since then with some questions, so I appreciate the due diligence and going through the policies. They are all recommended changes from board council. These are every policy that's on the agenda tonight, with the exception of one, I believe, is a change in state of Connecticut legislation that requires changes to boards of education policies in the state of Connecticut. This one is an example of that. What is in yellow are updates that are required by law to comply with municipal records retention schedules. We had a discussion about what that meant in the policy committee meeting, and for those of you who maybe were not there, the answer is it depends. It depends on the type of record that we are talking about, how long it has to be kept. Those are all regulations, and they are highly regulated by state and federal law. So differences, for example, between students' full educational records, their special education records if they have them, their health records, emails of any sort, paper documents of any sort. There were a number of changes that were made to keep documents, both paper and electronic, mostly as a result of the Office of the Public Records Administrator acknowledging the fact that so many records are now digital. And so many of them started as paper, and they've been scanned to digital records. So some of what has had to be updated on the part of municipalities, so whether you're the town or school district or the like, is what you have to or do not have to do with the paper records once they are digitized. That's part of what has changed here that we have to work through our regulations also to implement for the coming school year. We're in compliance, continue to be in compliance, but we are trying to go down a path of digitizing more records if we can, because, for example, as we'll talk about tonight, we have a lot of records that do need to be maintained that are on paper. Many of them are housed and have to be housed at the central office, Board of Education offices, and many of them are in the basement, where we've had numerous flooding issues, mold, and so on. So, and we are tasked with preserving those records. So we are working toward quotes on what that might look like to digitize and so on. It's just better for the records anyway. But these are the requirements that Board Council has made to this policy, which is a model policy also.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, Thage, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised policy 3543.31, retention and disposition of electronic records and information.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Nicole. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Our next item is revision to policy 4111.3, increasing educator diversity plan, begins on page 41.
Thank you. Again, these are changes required by law under, as you see right in the beginning, Connecticut General Statutes 10-156EE. We were previously required as school districts to have a, as you see in the previous title, a minority educator recruitment plan. That was what the law previously called for, that each Board of Education have a policy, which was this policy minus the yellow, and that the school district have a plan for minority educator recruitment. In the last legislative session, changes were made to the legislation. It is referred to as recruiting diverse individuals, which is why you'll see strike-throughs anywhere it says minorities or minority educators. So those changes are changes in the law. They are now required of the policy and of the subsequent plan. Remember, we've already discussed the plan. The law requires every school district to submit a plan, and a new part, that was an old part of the law, but a new part of the law, as we discussed previously, was that every Board of Education has to approve the plan. for it to be submitted. So we already did that piece that was required by law. This is the policy that goes along with it, with the changes.
Any questions? All right, Thage, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised policy 4111.3, increasing educator diversity plan.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Next item, revised policy 5141.5, suicide intervention and prevention, page 43 in your packet.
Again, this policy is required by law. We have had this policy, in fact, you can see, since 2015, minus the changes that are now highlighted in yellow. What goes alongside of this policy are a very comprehensive set of procedures and regulations related to it that we follow in the district. We had quite a conversation about that in the policy committee meeting. As I think Lynn mentioned, there are numerous pieces, even just to the policy, that are steps that have to be conducted by personnel. So we talked through why those are what they are and the fact that everything that's here is really required of us. But still, we are above and beyond in the prevention and the identification process because we need to be. We've made numerous changes in pupil services and in the trainings received by all district employees related to trauma, to suicide intervention and prevention, and various facets of mental health. We've updated our procedures for risk assessments. We've developed some new community partnerships related to crisis intervention. For example, the village now offers crisis intervention without appointments, off hours for students who find themselves in a way that they may require those sorts of services, or their parents decide that they may need them, or that at times we refer them. There is still 211 that we work with, the mobile crisis unit. We work with medical emergency personnel and through 911 when that's necessary, and at the next level with some of the other crisis intervention centers throughout the state. Those are all in conjunction with this policy, but just by way of further explanation that there is quite a bit of work that transpires between personnel, students, and families related to actually implementing this policy and doing it with fidelity.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Ramesh.
I see a verbiage here, right, like if necessary, will contact students' families. What does that mean? Can you?
Thank you. Someone asked the same question at the policy committee meeting. It's a good question. The reason it says is if necessary is because very often it's the parent who has brought the issue to us. We don't always have to contact the parent because we've been contacted by the parent. In other words, would there be a time that we would have a student who is in need of these kind of services that we would not speak to a parent? No.
Okay.
It's if necessary just because most of the time we are already working with them.
Okay, thank you.
Not all of the time, though.
Great question. Any others? And just points out the fact that at the policy subcommittee, these conversations are pretty in-depth. So we have it vetted at that level before it comes for action to the full board, but certainly conversation has taken place around this. So thank you, Ramesh, for asking that question.
That's a good question. Thank you.
All right, Thage, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve revised policy 5141.5, suicide intervention and prevention.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sarah. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, revised policy 6146, graduation requirements on page 44.
Thank you. You know what, I just realized something, Christine, I'm sorry. Just want to revisit the suicide policy. This is just for us to do. SRT, can we please, let's take the acronym out. That should be school response team.
Yep.
We did talk about that in the policy committee meeting, but
Yep, we did.
it didn't make it into this. And just to be clear, that is what we call it in Avon. If you were to look up the model policy, you would see CRT, crisis response team. We don't have to call it a crisis response team, and our language has been school response team, and everyone knows what that is here. So we call it that in the policy instead of the language. It's not legal language, it's just the recommendation because in many places it's known as a crisis response team.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry about that. So graduation requirements, I think I won't get out of my soapbox for the however manyth time about this. I don't agree with this as a policy, but it is the law. And so it has been recommended for update in the policy. You're really required to update the board policy to have this be a part of it because the Connecticut State Legislature passed a law that all students must complete a FAFSA, as we call it, a free application for federal student aid. It's not that that's a bad thing for students to complete this application. We do want students to complete the application to be able to find out if they qualify for any sort of aid in order to go to college. And I agree that the rate should be increased everywhere in the state. However, I just don't think we should put it on high school students as a part of their graduation requirement, really whether or not, generally speaking, their families complete these forms. That said, I guess I did get back on the soapbox. That said, you have to make this policy change because it is the law. We had to put it into our program of studies and into our requirements. It is for the next year's seniors, is the current junior class of 2025. All of that said, the caveat is, of course, that there are waivers that can be completed. And so and we would do that with students. Our counselors know how to do this. We've had these conversations. We're not concerned about that here at the high school. They will make this happen to meet the law, but they will also stand between students not being able to graduate as a result of this and help them complete waivers if that's necessary.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, is there a time frame of when they can turn it in? Like, is there a cutoff time?
You do have to do it in senior year because they're looking for tax returns and so on that are the previous year. So really, for a graduation requirement, I guess it would be before you graduate. Not an exact, we haven't put an exact date on turning them in.
Good question. Anyone else? All right, Thage.
I'd like to make a motion to approve revised policy 6146, graduation requirements.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Lynn. All in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. Next, we are looking to delete policy 6115.111, graduation exercises, student speeches and student participation on page 48.
So you see, this is an old policy that has not been revisited since 2015, and when we went through the graduation requirements policies and related instruction policies, this was noted as one that is not a model policy from Shipman. It is not required by state law, and when I went through it and then asked board council advice related to whether or not it should be revised, because in part Dr. Lockhart and I had conversations also about if we're following this policy, what students in good standing and complete graduation requirements looks like in practice, meaning, for example, we will very often have students with IEPs or 504s, students with special needs who may not complete all graduation requirements at the end of the year in which they may be walking, because they may stay on with us for transition services, for example. Now the law has changed, they're here with us up until 22 if they choose to be. And yet, generally speaking, what usually happens is that the student will walk at graduation with the students they've gone to school with for their entire career. Not always. Sometimes we work with the parents to make the choice. But that's an example of the inability to actually implement this policy if we're doing what is in the best interest of those students. So we started with that conversation. I brought this to Shipman, and they recommended it for deletion for all the reasons I just said, because these are procedural pieces for the administration to set rather than law or board policy. In other words, yes, we do have requirements, but we set what they are based on students.
Okay. Any questions? All right, Thage.
I'd like to make a motion to delete policy 6115.111, graduation exercises, student speeches, student participation.
And do I have a second? Thank you, Suzanne. All in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. Last policy of the evening, revised policy 6172.1, equitable identification of gifted and talented students, found starting on page 49.
Thank you. You can see this was a policy very recently revisited in 2023. We've revisited this policy numerous times in the time that I've been here. I think probably starting in the first year that I was here in part. That is because we've made numerous changes to the way that talented and gifted students are identified in Avon, both in conjunction with the law and also just made some changes related to best practice. For example, we don't identify only some students to be able to take the OLSAT, which is OLSAT, the standardized test. That's one of the measures that you can utilize for the identification of talented and gifted students. There have to be multiple measures, as you can see in this policy. That's required by law. We already had that in place. We already utilized the standardized test. However, we made a change, and some of you were on the board, I think, maybe only Deb and Jeff at this point. I think you may be the only two that were there with us when we made this change. And it was a budgetary change also, because we now administer that test to every third grader, so that across the board, we have at least one way of blanket identification along with all of the other ways, so that we're ensuring students don't fall through the cracks, so to speak. And that has budgetary impact because we have to pay for that standardized testing in third grade, but we've been doing that along with the other factors that are utilized for several years now. It's been going very well. All of that said, we've had numerous conversations tonight. The only change that's on here is the one that was required as a result of the last legislative session, which is that the policy has to state that all students, including English language learning students, have the equal opportunity to be classified as talented and gifted. That phrase is required by the latest legislation. That's not to say they would have been disallowed before. It's simply that the policy has to read that way by law now.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
What is the state expecting in terms of appropriate language assistance? Are the tests available in a variety of languages? Are they expecting us to provide translation services? Do we have any guidance from the state on that?
No.
Okay. Silly question.
Any other questions? All right, Paige?
I'd like to make a motion to approve revised policy 6172.1, equitable identification of gifted and talented students.
Do I have a second? Sarah? All in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you. This next item is very exciting for us on the board. We have been looking to get our central office staff out of the building they are currently in for a very long time. Dr. Carnamola, Ms. Russo, and myself stayed on for the Board of Finance meeting after the workshop last night and learned from the town manager as well as Houston that the building existed since the Lincoln presidency.
That was corrected to
And then
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson, because unfortunately he passed in the time frame that the building was built. But I think you'll get the reference that that's how old this building is. It is decrepit, and I will go on the record saying that. So we have this letter that allows for moving forward in the process of purchasing 200 Fisher Drive. So we have a presentation or explanation by Dr. Carnamola.
Yeah, presentation. First, thank you, Chair Shute. As a result of being at the Board of Finance meeting, obviously Susan, Miles, and I, Jim Connolly also, our Director of Security who's back here with us, Tom Klein, have been involved in looking at numerous properties over time at this point because we're looking at them for numerous reasons. This is obvious by the kind of personnel that's going out and looking at them. There's financial impact, there's the issue of the space and the inventory and the records retention that we have to have, the security in the building, the kind of networks that, if they're not there, need to be put in, and so forth. So the team of us on and off have been looking at possible properties for years. I'll get into it actually on the slide. But put that aside for a moment. It was talked through again last night, and as I sat listening to the Board of Finance meeting, I realized that the way that we were given the language for your action agenda tonight is not, I don't believe it to be accurate. So that said, Deb and I spoke before the meeting about whether or not to actually just make, someone should make a motion to change the agenda to have the correct language on it, or just wait until we got to the possibility of making the motion tonight and do it correctly there. So I think we have to have a little bit of conversation about that. The Board of Education is not approving the purchase of this building. The town's not even at this point approving the purchase of this building. What is being discussed is the possibility to move forward with the due diligence involved in the possibility of purchasing the building. So, and that will be a long process, and there's still a number of things to be discussed, financial implications. There are tenants in the building that this would be new for the town. The town would essentially be becoming landlords. We would occupy a part of the building, and there would still be tenants, which is going to help to offset the cost also. So there's a study that's about to take place. So I think that the more appropriate language for the agenda would have been, and therefore when we get to this, the motion would be to support the launching of the process for due diligence, the possibility of purchasing 200 Fisher Drive. And we were asked by the town for you to do this as a board, just so that everyone was on the same page. So in doing that, I thought it might be helpful. Now, I know many of you have seen some of this already, but just to make sure that we were clear about why this process is this point moving forward. So Christine, if you could move us forward, please, on the slides. So we just put this together. I shared it with you actually as we walked in here tonight, because thank you, Susan. I got up this morning and said, after I sat at the Board of Finance meeting last night, and said, we better have some very clear parameters around why, because this is not ideal timing. We're talking about a referendum that just failed, and then that meeting ends, and the next meeting is a Board of Finance meeting where one of the items on the agenda is talking about the possible purchase of a building. That wasn't great, but also it is where it is right now in the process, and therefore is being discussed. And also, there's still financial implications to be discussed. Some of it would be bonding, some of it would be, as I said, revenue sources. So I don't think it's as, quote, bad as it might look to someone on the outside thinking about this possibility right now. So a little bit of history. The original structure was built in 1879. It has had many additions and improvements made. It was converted to a junior high school in 1953. Because as you know, this was a school in the years before it was the Board of Ed offices. And renovations have continued for the next 60 years. We've pretty much done some sort of renovation and or improvement or repairs, definitely repairs, every year, so several times a year. Before my time in 16 and 17, the town began exploring other options. I think it had been talked about even before then, but they really got more involved in exploring other options in 16 and 17. Since I've been here, and I started in March of 18, we have looked at least 4 other properties that have not worked for one reason or another. They also needed too much work. They weren't the right kind of space. One of the more recent ones that actually both the town and we thought would work, the seller decided he didn't want to sell. We walked away from that one. And then this kind of came up. Someone heard that it was necessary, that the town was looking, and they made a phone call to someone in the town, and here we are. In the process, before finding this building, there had been several iterations of some sort of analysis of the current building. A full-scale one was done in 2023. You might remember they hired a firm to look both on the town side at some of their needs and also at ours. So top to building inspection, review, audit, if you will, of central office was done last summer. And that's because the town wanted to, in conjunction with us, make a decision about how to move forward. So the saying, throwing good money after bad kind of comes to mind. We were talking about, every year we come with capital projects, and there are big capital projects on the list, expensive projects that have to do with this building. And there started to be more and more conversation about whether or not it was worth putting any more money into. And so this study was done to make that determination.
Was that study done before the flooding?
Yes. The study was done before the last electrical issue flood that we had to evacuate for.
This is bad, but it's been worse.
It's worse now than it was when they were there,
Right,
yes.
thank you.
So some of the, I won't read everything to you, some of the current conditions in the areas of concern that have been identified. The boiler is 30-plus years old. It's a 70-year-old steam heat system. If you've been there with us, you know. Everyone's looking at me from central office. It's either working, it is working, or it's 100, or it's not working at all. We have asbestos throughout the building, in the ceilings and the floors. It's not ADA compliant. We've received numerous complaints related to that. We've had, over the 60 years, additional walls were installed over time, and so the heat zones are also all off. We have hay and newspaper as insulation in the ceiling. Single pane, I didn't know that until they did. I thought that was one of my favorite parts. We have single pane windows, and as we just said, prone to flooding. And I think why this is important, I just want to be clear. We're not trying to be posh and have, beautiful new office spaces because we think we're, entitled to have that. It would be nice for us to have nicer office spaces, yes, certainly. Heat that works, air conditioning, bathrooms that are usable, and so on would be fantastic. However, that's not the only problem. The other problem is that there's a lot of inventory in our building. Books, instructional materials, technology, a lot of our technology inventory, because there's nowhere in the schools to house it. And I see some of parents out here that I know have worked with us on PTOs and so on too. We're fighting for space for, theater stages, and there's not space out here. And one, and two, some of it has to be centralized control because it's such expensive equipment that gets distributed out to the schools. And most of it is in the basement. Also, 3 ceilings. There are literally 3 more ceilings have been built over the original. So when repairs do have to be made, there's quite a bit that has to be done for the ceilings to be taken down to access wiring, plumbing, HVAC issues, and so on. So that has just posed also some issues for us when we have needed repairs. Next slide. Our electrical service is maxed out. We're not able to put any more in. We have the old style BX wiring, some of it which is cloth insulated, the kind I'm talking about. That's we have a space that doesn't belong there, but we have inadequate space with no option to expand. We have the siding is rotted, the windowsills and the fascia are rotted. That's a problem because we've had to, in some of the windows where we haven't been able to replace it because of the kind of rot and so on, and they are old windows. Some of them we have had to nail shut. So all of the, like in my office, I think all of them but 1, maybe 2, and it goes around, are nailed shut. As you know, we've had to close the restrooms more than once, either the men's or women's room. We don't have gender neutral bathrooms. They're built from being an old school. They're, quote, gang bathrooms. You'll see a picture of that with multiple stalls inside. We've had numerous times where we've had to bring it down to we're using one of the restrooms, one person at a time, so that they were unisex, which means we've had people, and they're not going to say any names because they yelled at me the last time I did that, but sometimes there happen to be more females at central office than there are males, so unfortunately a few times that this has happened, it was males that were leaving to use restrooms wherever else they could in town. Because of indoor air quality concerns, and we had to have a company come out a few times in the last couple of years. Obviously, the plumbing is aged because what I already told you about the boiler and so on. The roof is 30-plus years old. We do need the parking lot repaved. There have been some repairs. We have an underground oil tank. And the costs to operate the building are higher than other buildings as a result of everything I just said. Just, hey, there's newspaper, there's single pane windows. So thanks, Susan did an analysis. We've had an 8.5% higher maintenance and 2.5% per square foot higher cost there than in any other buildings. So we're talking about schools that have spaces like we're sitting in, and it still costs more money where we are.
Decrepit.
So, just a few pictures in case you haven't seen it. This is the back. This is the back end of the building. Sorry, Miles' photography, and Susan threw a few more in today. Go ahead to the next one. This is an example of what I'm talking about. The sills and so on that are rotted in both spaces. That's a close-up of a window on the right. One of them. We didn't want to load it full. You can see the rotting on the other pieces there and under the door. That is the scene of the electrical issue, where the flood came in through the electrical panel that we had to evacuate as a result of. You see the hole there. That's what I'm talking about when I say the bathrooms. Those are the. That's what you mean by not posh, right? Yes, it's not posh. Oh gosh. That's one of the basement windows. You see on the outside, that's to try to keep some of the water out. It's a part of the basement. We do have remediation systems in the basement, doing the best they can for the mold and so on. That is, as I mentioned, there is one employee, sorry Miles, whose office is in the basement. That's the way down to his office. So, those are the examples. The results of the study were obviously that the existing structure is deficient and the renovations would be needed to bring the building up to code in all of the areas that you see there, which is pretty much every area of a building, because it is not to code in any of those ways. The size is deficient. As I said, it's not just us as employees. There are records and inventory for the entire district that are there, and it was determined as a result of that we needed another 7,320 square feet. If you can't, I invite anyone, come in and see the basement and what it looks like that we're trying to manage with the inventory and the records that are downstairs. The what? On a non-rainy day. On a non-rainy day. If you do come on a rainy day, rubber boots. Because that's how we were told not to get electrocuted when it happened last time. So they costed out what would be needed to take care of those things. It was a total of over $9.5 million to do the renovations. The renovations alone and the site improvements you see, regardless of an addition for the space needs, the addition was the least of it. The rest is for fees and bringing the place up to code. So clearly the town said we don't want to spend $9.5 million on the building to do that. So I said, okay, maybe it might be cheaper to do new construction. And they came up with a cost of $10,400,000, which I guess is not that much of a surprise given the cost of building materials and labor right now. So we continued to look for sites. This one was found. The options are to lease a property. There's very limited inventory in Avon, and we do have to stay in Avon. That's one of the issues. There's not a lot of commercial space that would be utilized. Or purchase an existing building. Just to be clear, I wanted to make sure that we said there is not usable space available at any of the schools. If there was, we would have done that already. We would have already just left and fit ourselves into one of the schools. We had those conversations. We did those space studies. We can't do it. So 200 Fisher Drive is the property that is currently being looked at. It meets the requirements, has some potential for growth. It's been very well maintained. It's an architect and a property management firm that owns the building. And it would, as I said, provide a revenue stream to offset the costs. I know one question might be, what will happen to the building that you're in if you vacate it? And there is not an answer to that right now. They will move forward on those decisions at some other time. Possibly it could be sold.
Bulldozed.
I'm not sure. They have not decided. Yeah? Yes, so that's part of why Jim Connolly has been involved too, and that will be a part of the conversation anyone that would enter the building because it's owned by the town would have to go through our security. So we would have, you know, we would have to have someone there like we have in all of the other buildings, which has been recommended to us numerous times already, but we actually don't have anywhere to put them at this office anyway, which is one of the reasons that, you know, we've just implemented other procedures so that people come into our office less and we kind of handle more from the outside because we can't put them through the same sorts of security that we can in schools. Jeff, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask the same question, but you prompted an excellent point, though. When a person enters a public school currently, they have to present a license, and we check their names against a state database. Is that going to be the same process for anyone attending any of the businesses in that building? Can we turn away someone going
No.
to another business if
No,
they're on one
we
of these
cannot.
lists?
We cannot. People would still be allowed in, but if they were and actually, if there are not students at our offices,
Okay.
a person can still come through to us that turns up on a registry.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the next steps that we were asked to discuss, the town manager asked, in conjunction with having already discussed this with the town council, the board to send a letter via me to the town to support this if we're going to move forward. They would then, again, this timing is what it is. I didn't decide on this, and I don't know that they did either. I think it's just the way this is moving. The town council would vote on a purchase agreement at the June 6th town council meeting if that were the case. And the referendum is June 7th.
And you'll share these slides with them?
Yes.
Okay.
They have this information too. We just put this together because we thought it would be easiest viewing for everyone tonight. And then that would begin the due diligence phase from June through September if that happens. And that includes all facets, the inspections, an environmental survey, property service, so on. So if all of that panned out, then the next step would be to meet with planning and zoning. In other words, this is still really far away from being something that is an actuality. I believe they said if everything went exactly to plan, and the building was purchased, we might be in sometime next summer. And we would probably have to phase in because there will still most likely be tenants there that are already there and still occupying some of the space that might be ours eventually. That's a possibility based on the leases, current leases in the building.
Any other questions?
There's one more next step. I'll just put it up so you
sorry.
can see it. It pretty much says what I just said. Excuse me, I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up today. That would be what the rest of a timeline might look like according to town council at this point.
Lynn?
My only question is, I don't know anything about commercial property sales, but right now, there's nothing in writing, so somebody could swoop in and
Correct.
and grab it.
But I think
No?
we're really the only
There's
conversation right now.
There's a letter of an intent.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
there's
that-
something.
There's an
There's
accepted letter of intent. The next step is the
They're
purchase
working with
agreement.
us.
Good question.
I don't know anyone who wants to swoop in, but you never know.
It also is a good time, so to speak, to try to buy commercial property because a lot of it in general is vacant, not a lot of it in Avon. There's not much to be had to begin with.
Anything else? All right, so the wording on I'm sorry, go ahead, Ramesh.
I think you put some numbers earlier, right? The cost of renovation versus cost of new one. So from the leasing perspective with this new property, how much is going to cost for the next 30 years?
They don't have those projected out yet.
Okay.
And this property wouldn't be a lease, it would be a purchase. The
town would be purchasing it.
Owning the building. So there's a purchase price that they're working on that would purchase the building. The tenants would continue to lease the spaces or annex.
They haven't priced out all of the costs associated with that at this point. They have to know what they may pay for the building first, besides what the current leases are and the market value and so forth.
But will they know that before the June, when they're voting to?
There are conversations
forward?
they're having already.
They
So
want our
timing just seems
buy-in.
really-
They want our buy-in. So
Yeah.
they're waiting on us to have this conversation so that they can move forward on it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Susan, because
I say they do have, they're working on and have an idea of what the purchase price would be. Obviously, don't want to say that in a public meeting, but they do have that. What we'll be looking at is the maintenance costs, the upkeep, the living there costs. I do not believe there'll be a quote unquote rent that we would have to pay. We currently don't pay rent for the building that we occupy to the town. Be more of a shared understanding of our portion of our costs and how the revenues offset the maintenance costs going forward, or the operating cost.
Right, and not to belabor this, but you were saying that the cost currently is so high that, I mean, it's a larger space, and there are a lot of things to consider, but I'm curious. I know we're not discussing this tonight, but I am curious to see how
So
that
part of the due diligence is just that. It's an operational study on what the anticipated costs. They look at what they're currently paying in electrical and gas and those sort of things. And I think we are hoping that revenue stream, one of the ideas would be that we to go into what's called an enterprise fund to help offset operating cost. So we'll take that all into account.
I think Jeff had another question.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so if you're comfortable, we're going to change the wording of the action that we're taking this evening, more so that the board moves to approve moving forward with this process by the town for due diligence in the next steps, if that makes sense to everyone. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Thage. All in favor? Excellent. It's progress. Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is facility use funds on page 55. Ms. Russo?
Thank you. For those members new to the board, the facility use fund is a separate operating fund that we use, and we collect the fees for the rental of the school buildings. So we, through our facility use policy, depending on the organization's classification, whether or not they use custodial coverage on a weekend, they pay fees to use our space to offset our operating cost of that space. Those fees are collected in a fund that we allocate to projects. Normally, every 5 years, we use them to refinish floors, keep up the gyms, the parking lots, et cetera. I'm anticipating that fund having an ending balance of approximately $154,000 at the end of this fiscal year. We had talked about at Finance Committee some of these proposed projects to move forward with. Given the state of the budget, and I think one of our board members asked this very question, if the budget were to fail, what should we do here? What I'd like to ask the board is for approval to move forward with 2 of these projects until the budget's passed, because they are necessary projects that we would need to do regardless of it, and that would be the Thompson Brook parking lot repairs and the playground barriers at Roaring Brook. If you've been to the Roaring Brook playground, not the pre-K one out front, which we are scheduled if the capital budget goes through to replace this year. This is the other playground out back, the main one. There's old wooden barriers that separate the grassy area from the mulch area, and they desperately need replacing. It's becoming untenable. So this would be replacing them with plastic barriers that are more hardy in weather, particularly in Connecticut. I'd like to move forward with those 2 projects, and if the budget were to pass, I ask for approval for the remaining projects. These funds do not expire as of June 30th. This is a revolving fund we can carry forward, so we do not have the same timeline as we do on general fund or grants. So we can revisit these projects, or with your approval over the summer, Mr. Oltmus and I will just move forward with them. If we're in a place where we can, if we have to make budget revisions, then we'd look to this fund to try to help offset some things. I did as well, Mr. Oltmus and I reached out to the high school staff, particularly Mr. Brochu, who then coordinated with his other members of the musical theater, orchestra, and all the stakeholders. And he put together for us a repair and wish list. So the Finance Committee had asked us if there was, to use a little bit more of these funds, perhaps to increase the budget for the AHS auditorium, particularly the stage line item there. And what we'll do with your approval is go through that list. Mr. Oltmus is reviewing that, and we'll continue to see what's feasible to get that work done. And that's work that we can continue throughout the year with those funds.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, sir.
quick question about the playground barriers and also the 5,000 playground cracks. I know you didn't say that that was one of the two, but are these safety issues or more aesthetic?
The playground barriers are definitely safety issues. The wood is becoming rotted, and we're the ones that are unsafe. So I want to make it clear: the ones that are unsafe at the current time are being removed immediately. The other ones are failing. So we'd like to replace them during the summer so that we could be very confident that everyone in there. The cracks, I would say in terms of priorities, Mr. Ultimus and I, that would be our next priority. So if we were to have those funds, and that he expanded, I think the most recent quote that we have just this week is that's actually up to almost 10,000 in cracks that they found at the site visit. So if we were to move forward, that would definitely be the next on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So the motion tonight would be for these two projects and then bring back the list, or give you the authority to incorporate them if the budget should pass?
The second, the latter.
Okay.
That way we can move forward over the summer.
Excellent. Do I have a motion to move this list forward? Thank you, Suzanne. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, supplemental appropriation for the open choice tuition. You'll see on page 56.
Thank you again. Talking a lot this evening. So every year, for those board members, again, that are newer, we receive our open choice attendance grant and open choice, if it's funded, the early beginnings grant. What this is funding through the open choice program for those students attending Avon Public Schools. And we budget very conservatively with the information we know at the time when we craft the budget. So we budget for the number of students we have attending. We take a look at those students graduating and the incoming seats we have open. We use that number to budget at a per pupil amount what the grant allocated. During last school year, the grant was changed after the budget was passed. So we didn't have the opportunity to revise our revenue numbers. We budgeted at the lower tier, which had previously been $6,000 per student. If you remember at the end of last year, we did see that that $2,000 per student, and it included in our supplemental appropriation last year. This year, we have that same differential because the budget had already passed. We did include in next year's 24-25 budget the higher amount. And I also recommended during the budget process that the early beginnings grant has been stable and has been funded the entire time I've been in the district. So we have budgeted revenue for that as well to offset the budget. So that would not be a revenue source for next year. If there's any differential, yes, we would ask for those funds. Part of the grant says that all the funds have to come directly to the school district. It's not an offset to the global town budget like ECS is or the educational cost share. Those funds go directly to the town and are to offset the town's budget in full. Open choice needs to flow directly back to us in the entire dollar amount. So what we're asking for is we've received 119 students as of our October snapshot, and at $8,000 per student. We also received additional funds because we had at least 10 students in every school this year, and that qualified us for bonus funds. Those funds change every year. It depends on how much is in the pot, how many students there are, and how much there is to allocate. So that bonus this year was $56,396. Altogether, for the attendance grant, we received $1,008,396. We had budgeted $654,000 based on, I believe, 112 students or 114 at the $6,000 per student. So that's a significant difference between what we budget. Again, we will not see that next year. Okay, we were much more on target on what it will be, and I don't foresee them raising that from 8,000 to a higher number. Our early beginnings grant, that's for our pre-K and K students that enroll in the district, and that we had 19 for this fiscal year as of 10/1, and that is an additional $6,500 per pupil we received for that grant. That grant last year had not been budgeted. It was budgeted at $0, so we are asking for the full $123,500. So the total request to the town would be $477,896. The primary use for these was going to be the instructional supplies, curriculum, materials, and equipment. This is going to be used for the K-5 math program that you've reviewed all year. Mr. Giannini has talked about, and if you remember back to, it feels like forever ago, but December in January when we crafted the budget, we made a conscious decision not to include this in the budget because we knew these funds were coming back to us. So the responsible decision would be to not include it, to have that one-time bump in our supply and equipment line and just use choice funds to offset those costs because it's a one-time investment. The going forward costs, we will have that. We'll have going forward costs for the program, but it'd be much less substantial than what we have now. And we negotiated, Mrs. Krasansky negotiated into the quote with the program to have a 3-year license. So we have 3 years of software licenses going forward included in the quote, so we were able to afford that in this open choice funds. In addition, we're going to be purchasing some Chromebooks. The remaining funds will pay for 1 grade level and a little bit extra. So a little bit of grade 9, all of grade 5. We'll be placing an order with your approval for those Chromebooks with that equipment funds we talked about in general fund, the remaining funds from the open choice program.
Questions?
And just so the public is clear that these Chromebooks and everything are for all of the students and not just the open choice kids.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, these for all students of grades 5 and 9. So it would be a 300 Chromebook order amongst the 2 grades. 600, sorry. Tom probably throw something at me. 600.
And that is in line with the requirements of the grant also.
Correct.
Thank you. So do you need us to approve what you want to purchase with the money, or is this purely informational?
We just need you to approve that we are asking the town for a supplemental appropriation. That's part of the way the procedure works.
Okay.
It has to happen because
Right.
by law, they have to make the appropriation, but it's just the way the process works.
Okay.
Nicely.
So who would like to make the motion? Go
So
ahead,
moved.
Sarah. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, finally, we have our discussion, possible action on changes to the 2024-25 approved budget. Having attended the tri-board workshop last evening, the conversation was around the town manager finally having final numbers on revenue sources. So there were 2 grant funds that were finalized, including our educational cost sharing and motor vehicle tax reimbursement, which brought the number from the 3.3% ask down to a 2.96% ask. So without touching any of the requests that the board has made, the budget is going forward with the 2.96 for a second referendum. But we don't have to discuss cutting anything because we're still waiting for the results of the June 7th vote. There will be a public hearing on May 28th for the town to give their feedback again, and then June 7th is the revised date from June 5th, which was the original one, to allow enough time to notify the town of the proceedings. I don't know if anyone has any other comments or questions. All right, so it's a wait and see. We're hoping that we do have a good turnout in favor of this number, so we don't have to go to a 3rd referendum. But we don't need to take any action this evening. So that's where
No, we had discussed putting it on the agenda
just in case.
because depending on what the Board of Finance did last night, we might have had to have a conversation tonight about making reductions to the budget, whether that was on the overall budget, capital budget, revenue changes, anything, but it's not necessary as a result of what they did last night.
Okay. Anything else from the board? All right, can we look to see if there's communication from the public for this section of the meeting? Thank you, Christine. All right, since there's none, communication from Avon Board of Education members. Anyone? Go ahead, Suzanne.
I just wanted to say that I attended the musical, and it was just fantastic. It was amazing. I've been to probably every single musical play that's been here, and it was just stellar. I think I was smiling the entire time. It was fantastic. Kudos to everybody who was involved, and the performances were great, and I can't wait to see what happens with the Halo Awards.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I was just going to say to all the administrators, the leaders of all the schools, I give you credit because there's still such momentum at this time of the year. I know we always joke that it's busy and every day there's something, but it's not just to fizzle out into the summer. And I think that's so important for the students to feel that continued momentum and kind of end on a positive note. So just kudos for what you're doing. It's not going unnoticed. And yeah, thanks for all the hard work you're putting in, also all of you.
Nicole.
So I was not here earlier. I did want to say at the high school musical, I was like pointing to my kids. I'm like, I know her. You did such a great job. So kudos to you. And I was late because I was at the Thompson Brook 6th grade spring concert, and it was just absolutely amazing what the kids can do and what the music directors of the instruments and the band and the orchestra and the chorus and musica dulce. It's just really wonderful to see what we're providing for the students. And these were hard numbers, like high school level numbers, and these 6th graders were just rocking it. So, I want to thank everybody who was involved in that.
Thank you. Jeff?
So I know several of us on the board are very familiar with the online conversation on social media regarding bullying in the Avon Public Schools. I am deeply disturbed by what I've heard. And as a parent of a child who's faced horrendous bullying here in the public schools for the last 2 years, we have failed at meeting our mission statement, and we as a district must do more. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Lynn.
I'm not even sure if this is appropriate, but I just am so proud of one of our colleagues, and that is Dr. Tej Singh, who just earned her doctorate in speech and language pathology, and just shows how we care on this board about education, and I am really proud of you. You want your picture taken?
Thank you, Lynn. You're going to make me cry. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Chris, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Sarah. All in favor? We adjourn at 9:02 p.m.